Hello and welcome to NEET Prep Go, or welcome back to NEET Prep Go. So this is the second video. Today we are going to do organisms and population, class 12th biology. So today we'll be doing NCERT line by line because organism and population, there are a lot of examples in this. Okay, so since there are a lot of examples, I I prefer the NCERT textbook, NCERT reading and explanation, line by line explanation would be the best. Okay, because if I start teaching like one by one, like on my own, then I can, but again, like it will be a lot of writing, a lot of like better it's better anyways. You'll have to open NCERT and sit, so I think it will be better if we read NCERT. Now I won't be sharing the PDF, okay, because again, share the PDF and then again highlight on the PDF, like why? Like you have your own NCERT textbook, right? So take out your NCERT textbook, page number 219. Okay, organisms and population, chapter 13, and let's get started. So I'll be reading and then explaining, and like that we'll try to cover the chapter, but it's a very big chapter, so we'll see how much we can cover. Okay, so let's start. First, our living world is fascinatingly diverse and amazingly complex. We can try to understand its complexity by investigating processes at various levels of biological organization: macromolecules, cells, tissues, organs, individual organisms, population, communities, ecosystems, biomes. So this is very self-explanatory, very diverse and amazingly complex our living world is. Okay, last class we read about living world, we get to know the diversity, classification, all of that. So we can try to understand its complexity by investigating processes, various biological organization: macromolecule, cell, tissue, organ, organism, population, community, ecosystem, biomes. We will read these further in detail. At any level of biological organization, we can ask two types of questions. For example, when we hear the bulbul singing early morning in the garden, we may ask, how does the bird sing, or why does the bird sing? The how type questions seek the mechanism behind the process, while the why type questions seek the significance of the process. For the first question, in our example, the answer might be in terms of the operation of the voice box and the vibrating bone in the bird. Whereas for the second question, the answer may lie in the bird's need to communicate with its mate during the breeding season. So they gave an example of bulbul, wherein the bulbul is singing. How is she singing? She's singing because of her voice box, or the vibrating bone, in which is responsible for the generation of noise music, you can say. And why is she singing? Maybe she's calling out to her mate. It's the breeding season for the bulbul birds. So when you observe nature around you with a scientific frame of mind, you will certainly come up with many interesting questions of both types. Why are night blooming flowers generally white? How does the bee know which flower has nectar? Why does the cactus have so many thorns? How does the chick's purse recognize her own mother? And so on. Now we come to the next page. You have already learned in previous classes that ecology is a subject which studies the interactions among organisms and between the organism and its physical or abiotic environment. So we know what's biotic and abiotic factors, right? So I'll be explaining small things in between. Okay. So wherever I feel like I need to highlight or point out this point, then I'll be, and by that time please have a pencil on your hand and keep underlining the important points. So biotic factors and abiotic factors. Biotic factors, bio, abiotic factors, abio. So these are, both are biotic. Okay, so these would be the living organisms. So both are natural. Both are natural, naturally found. These will be the living organisms. These will be the non-living natural resources, such as you can say soil. For this, rock, humans, your pets, whatever. Okay. So ecology is, yeah. So what is ecology? When I say what is ecology, ecology is the interaction between biotic and abiotic factors. So here biotic means the living organism and abiotic means the physical environment, okay, or surrounding, such as water, soil, rocks, trees, all these things. Now let's ecology is basically concerned with four levels of biological organization: organism, population, community, and biome. In this chapter we explore ecology at organismic and population levels. Okay. Now comes organism and its environment. Ecology at the organismic level is essentially physiological ecology, which tries to understand how different organisms are adapted to their environments in terms of not only survival but also reproduction. You can highlight this. So ecology in the organismic level is essentially physiological ecology, which tries to understand how different organisms adapt to their environments, not only in terms of survival but also reproduction. You may have learned in earlier classes how the rotation of our planet around the sun and the tilt of its axis cause annual variations in the intensity and duration of temperature, resulting in distinct seasons. These variations, together with annual variation precipitation, account for the formation of major biomes such as desert, rainforest, and tundra. You can underline this too. So how are biomes, major biomes formed, like desert and rainforest and tundra regions and all of it? They are so we know in earlier classes, okay, we have learned that this is the sun. Okay, this is, let's say, planet. Okay, it's the river. This is in the middle, the sun is in the middle. So if this is the planet and this is the sun, okay, let's say the rays are coming here. Okay, so maximum rays, you can say, they are coming like the in this region. In this region minimum rays are coming, and then it keeps continuously rotating also. So like this only, different, we have learned that different variation, different seasons are there, and then different climates, different conditions. It's due to the amount of sunlight or variation, you can say, which causes different seasons and different intensity and duration of temperature. Now these variations, along with precipitation, water vapor, it's summer season, water vapor will go up, and in clouds it will condense to form clouds, and then as they get heavier and heavier and heavier, again in rainy season, yeah, it will start raining. Okay, so these all together make the major biomes. What are the major biomes? Major biomes can be desert, major biome, desert, rainforest, and tundra. Okay. Next, regional and local variations within each biome lead to the formation of wide variety of habitats. Okay, more regional and local variation will lead to wide variety of habitats. Major biomes of India are shown in figure 13.2 on planet Earth. Okay, so major biomes: tropical rainforest, deciduous rainforest, desert, sea coast. Okay, so these are the major biomes which I have written. Now, if someone says major biomes in India, major biomes in India, then you can say tropical rainforest, deciduous rainforest, desert, sea coast. Okay, now we'll increase the speed. Okay, we'll go fast because we are still on the first page and already 11 minutes have passed. Okay, so major biomes of India are shown are on planet Earth. Life exists not just in a few favorable habitats, but even in extreme and harsh habitat. In Rajasthan, desert, it's so hot over there. Still, life exists. Rain-soaked Meghalaya forests, deep ocean trenches, torrential streams, permafrost, which means snow-laden polar regions, high mountain tops, Himalayas, and thermal springs, and stinking compost pits, to name a few. Even our intestine is a unique habitat for hundreds of species of microbes. So we know there are a lot of microbes in our small intestine too. Okay, which help in digestion and absorption. So this figure 13.1, okay, it's very important: biome distribution with respect to annual temperature and precipitation. So there we can see that below is the precipitation, and the y-axis, you can say, is the temperature. Okay, so precipitation, you can see it's highest in tropical rainforest, then in coniferous forest, and the temperature is highest in desert with least rainfall, then grassland also with least rainfall. In Arctic and alpine and tundra regions, you can see the temperature is very less. uh, the rainfall is also less, only, not that much. So yeah, so this is the table. You should at least remember. They will give you the graph and they'll ask you to label it, so you can remember that much. Now, what are the key elements that lead to so much variation in the physical and chemical conditions of different habitats? The most important key elements, or the most important ones, are temperature, water, light, and soil. Temperature, water, light, and soil, they are the key elements which lead to so much variation in physical and chemical conditions in different habitats. Okay, we must remember that physiochemical or abiotic components alone do not characterize the habitat of an organism completely. The habitat includes biotic components also, such as pathogens, parasites, predators, competitors of the organism with which they interact constantly. We assume that over a period of time, the organism had, through natural selection, evolved adaptation to optimize its survival and reproduction in its habitat. Each organism has invariably defined range of conditions that it can tolerate, diversity in the resources it utilizes, and a distinct functional role in the ecological system. All these together comprise its niche. Please underline this. This is really important. So, um, yeah. So when I say habitat, then all the abiotic components or physiochemical components do not just make the habitat. Okay, if I say habitat of a fish, I wouldn't just say the water and the sea grasses and all. No, when I say habitat, it also includes the predators which can eat the fish, bigger fish. Okay, then it will be the competitors, other species of fishes which will compete for the same resources with that particular species of fish. Parasites, okay, which will uh, be harmful to the fish, but yeah, but stay, but utilize its nutrients, and basically the fish will be the host, and the one which would be benefited would be the parasite. We'll read about this later on in interactions. And then pathogens, disease causing organisms, as we have seen in human health and disease. We will take that chapter after this one. So each organism has an invariably defined range of conditions that it can tolerate. Each and every organism has some range of conditions which it can tolerate. We can live up to, we can survive in desert, but we cannot survive near a volcano, right? So in a volcano. So diversity in the resources it utilizes and distinct functional role in the ecological system, all these together comprise as its niche. Many people get confused, even I actually got confused at first. I thought that like habitat is the entire place, okay, whereas niche is only like the like habitat is like entire surrounding everything, okay, like the animals, also predators, parasites, all of them, as well as the abiotic components, and niche is a particular like place, chosen thing. But actually the actual definition of niche, as according to the NCERT textbook, is um, that a distinct functional role in the ecological system. So this role word in the ecological system, that's, you need to remember that it's called as the niche. Major abiotic factors. What are the major abiotic factors? Okay, major abiotic factors, we have four: temperature, water, light, and soil. These are the four major abiotic factors. First, let's come to temperature. Temperature is the most important ecologically relevant environmental factor. Okay, it's the most important and ecologically relevant environmental factor. You are aware that the average temperature on land varies seasonally, decreases progressively from the equator towards the poles, and from plains to the mountain tops. It ranges from sub-zero level in polar areas to high altitudes of more than 50 degrees Celsius in tropical deserts in summer. There are, however, unique habitats such as thermal spring and deep sea hydrothermal vents where average temperature exceeds 100 degrees Celsius. It is general knowledge that mango trees do not and cannot grow in temperate countries like Canada and Germany. Snow leopards are not found in Kerala forest, and tuna fish are rarely caught beyond tropical latitudes in the ocean. You can appreciate the significance of temperature of living organism when you realize that it affects the kinetics of enzymes, and through it the metabolic activity and other physiological functions of the organism. This is really important, please underline this line. You can appreciate significance of temperature of living organism when you realize it affects the kinetics of the enzymes, and through it the metabolic activity and other physiological functions of the organism. Okay, so it says, okay, let me read the entire temperature part, then I will come to the explanation. A few organisms can tolerate and thrive in a wide range of temperature. They are known as eurythermal. Okay, but a vast majority of them are restricted to narrow range of temperature, such as such organisms are known as stenothermal. The levels of thermal tolerance of different species determine to a large extent their geographical distribution. Can you think of a few eurythermal and xenothermal animals and plants? In recent years, there has been a growing concern about the gradually increasing average global temperature. If this trend continues, would you expect the distributional range of some species to be affected? All right. So, the first part, let's come to the first part of temperature. Okay, major abiotic factors. Major. Okay, first, temperature. So now here in temperature it is written that average temperature varies seasonally. It decreases progressively from equator towards the poles and from plains to mountain tops. Okay, so when I say the temperature decreases from equator towards the poles, again, this is the sun, this is our earth. Okay, it's giving light. Maximum light is over here, okay, and then minimum light is at the poles. Why? Because our earth is not a perfect circle or something. No, it's kind of a sphere. That too, it's tilted like this. So So here least amount of sunlight is there, okay, the here maximum is there. So here of course in equator the temperature is more, and as we move towards the poles the temperature gets less and less, okay. uh, and in plain regions, in plain regions altitude is very less, okay. In mountain tops the altitude is so high, so of course the altitude is high means the pressure will be low, altitude is high, so the temperature will also be low. So that's why the temperature it also decreases from plain to mountain top. Now in some, in some regions such as uh, like in tundra regions it's sub-zero or minus and all, and whereas in deserts, especially in summer season, sometimes it's more than 50 degrees Celsius. Whereas in some thermal springs and deep sea hydrothermal vents the temperature is almost 100 degrees Celsius. So it is a general knowledge, okay. So we know that mango trees they cannot grow in temperate countries. Snow leopards, will you ever see snow leopards in South India? No, because they cannot survive there because the temperature is very high. You cannot see. Have you ever seen snow leopards in the desert in Rajasthan? No, or Sahara desert? No. So uh, yeah, and tuna fish are rarely caught beyond the tropical latitudes. So you can appreciate that the most of the organisms they get distributed on the basis of the abiotic factors. Okay, so on the basis of temperature, many organisms get distributed also. Like we know, archaebacteria can survive in very high temperatures. So I can say that in hot springs, archaebacteria will survive, but will other organisms survive? No, they won't. Will we survive? No, we won't, because the temperature is very high. So but still at the so what exactly, so we can appreciate significance of temperature because through it, okay, it it affects the kinetics of enzymes, okay, and through its metabolic activity and other physiological functions of the organism. So when I say archaebacteria can survive in very high temperatures, they have certain enzymes while in cell wall formation, their cell wall constitute of such enzymes or such proteins which helps them, which prevents them from dying or getting destroyed in extreme temperatures. So organisms which can thrive in wide range of temperatures, they are called as eurythermal. Organisms which have a narrow range of temperature, they are known as stenothermal. Okay. So most of the poikilotherms are stenothermal and most of the homeotherms are eurythermal. What are homeotherms, poikilotherms? Homeotherms are warm-blooded animals and poikilotherms are cold-blooded animals. Then yeah, the levels of thermal tolerance of different species determine to a large extent the geographical distribution. So basically, so many species of animals on the basis of the temperature tolerance they are distributed, okay, geographically, all through the world. Can you think of a few eurythermal and stenothermal animals and plants? Yeah, lizard you can say stenothermal, us you can say eurythermal. Plants also similarly, those plants which only grow in particular places where it's really cold or really hot, those will be stenothermal. Whereas plants which you can see everywhere, growing, those are stenothermal. Now let's come to, can you, in recent years, there has been growing concern, yeah, about increase in global temperatures. If this trend continues, would you expect? Yes. So basically, due to global warming, we know that temperature is continuously increasing. We know that the snow caps, mountains, all of them, they are snow is melting, and there is a rise in the level of water in the oceans and seas. So this is, of course, this is going to, this is going to change, this has resulted in a lot of climate change, unexpected climate change. So this is because of all this is going to affect all the organisms as well as humans, okay. And therefore it may change the distribution of many species across the world if there's this, if we keep, harming our environment, and global warming continues. Now let's come to the second major abiotic, very important abiotic factor, that is water. Water is another most important factor influencing the life of organisms. In fact, life on Earth originated in water and is unsustainable without water. Its availability is so limited in deserts that only special adaptations make it possible for organisms to live there. Okay, so it is a very important factor. Life on Earth originated in water, and it is unsustainable without water. We cannot, now that we can live without food for so many days, but we cannot live for even some hours without water. That important water is. So its availability is so limited in desert that only special adaptations make it possible for organisms to live there. The productivity and distribution of plants is also heavily dependent on water. You might think that organisms living in ocean, lakes, and rivers should not face any water related problem, but it's not true. Why it's not true? You many of you would say that okay, हमें तो dehydration काफी होता है, but what about the fishes and all of them? They are always in water and they cannot survive without water. They cannot live without water. They are aquatic animals, so they will have ample of water always. No, that's not true, because in oceans and seas the salinity is very high, and as organisms they also need fresh water. They cannot live up to a higher amount of salinity in water. Therefore, for them also the survival is very difficult. For aquatic organism, yeah, many things, also the pH, the chemicals in the water, salinity, so many things are important. For aquatic organism, the temperature also of the water, the chemical composition or pH of water becomes very important. If the water, if you put so many chemicals in the water, do you think fishes can live over there? No, because it's toxic for them, it's poisonous for them, they won't be able to live over there. If the water becomes too acidic or too basic, then cannot live there. Water should be neutral also in pH and chemical composition. Salt concentration, that is salinity. In salinity is measured in parts per thousand. Underline, this is very important. Is less than 5 inland waters. Okay, so salinity parts per thousand, that is in is less than 5 in inland waters. What are inland waters? Inland water means your pond, river, all inland water, all of them, ponds and rivers, they come in inland water. That is, if for them the salinity is less than 5. Then 30 to 35 parts per thousand salinity is measured in the sea, and then more than 100 is there in some hypersaline lagoons. So lagoons, you have must have seen those lagoons wherein salt quarries also, they say, where the salt is in excess, it's collected. So there the salinity is more than 100 parts per thousand. Some organisms are tolerant for a wide range of salinity. They are known as euryhaline, but others are restricted to narrow range of salinity. They are known as stenohaline. Many freshwater animals cannot live for long in seawater and vice versa because of osmotic problems that they would face. Underline this is really important. So I think the fish rohu is euryhaline. No, salmon I think is euryhaline, and shark is stenohaline. That I'm sure of. So wait, let me write this. So another abiotic factor is water, euryhaline, stenohaline. You can say salmon fish. Here you can say shark. Shark are stenohaline. They can only survive in a very narrow range of salinity. Okay. Now another point also, they said that many freshwater and seawater fishes. That's why from all the examples, aquatic organism examples, we always used to say freshwater fish, freshwater organism, seawater organism, because it is important. Because when I say freshwater, there's the salt. We do not take salt concentration in that. Whereas for a very high salinity, the organisms, they purify and they need fresh water, right? So osmotic problems. What will exactly be the osmotic problem if I take a freshwater fish and a seawater fish, and I put this one freshwater in seawater, and I put the seawater in freshwater? What will happen? We know hypertonic solution, right? Same thing will happen. These two fishes, here inside concentration is more, outside, sorry, here inside concentration is less, okay. The salt content is less, outside it's more. So this will like shrink, shrink and all. So basically, like, there'll be many osmotic problems, though it won't shrink or anything, but there will be a lot of osmotic problems overall. So because of which they cannot survive, they die. Now let's come to the third major, light. Okay. Since plants produce food through photosynthesis, a process which is only possible when sunlight is available as a source of energy, we can quickly understand the importance of light for living organisms, particularly autotrophs. So we know that we know that yeah. So sorry. So as I was saying, for light, um, plants produce food through photosynthesis, we know, right? So for photosynthesis, we know that light is necessary. So a process is it is only possible when sunlight is available as a source of energy. So basically, light is very important for light is very important for plants, okay, particularly autotrophs. Why? Because we know what are autotrophs. Autotrophs are the organisms which make their own food. Okay, so it is really important for them because they make their own food by photosynthesis, and photosynthesis can be achieved only if we have light as a source of energy. Now, many species of small plants, herbs, and shrubs growing in forest are adapted to photosynthesize optimally under very low light conditions because they are constantly overshadowed by tall canopy trees. So many of the small plants, herbs, and shrubs which are very small in size, you must have seen them growing at the bark of long tall trees. They get very less sunlight and they are not able to meet their photoperiodic requirement for flowering because of other because they get very low light conditions because they are constantly overshadowed or shaded by the tall canopy trees. Many plants are also dependent on sunlight, to meet their photoperiodic requirement. Many animals too many animals too, light is important in that they use diurnal and seasonal variations in light intensity and duration as cues for timing their foraging, reproductive, and migratory activities. So for many animals also, light is important because these diurnal and seasonal variations in light intensity and duration, that is the photo period, these all act as cues for certain animals as their time for foraging, reproductive, and migratory activities. So that's why light is really important. The availability of light on land is closely linked with that of temperature, since sun is the source of both. Okay, for heat also, like temperature, rise in temperature, warmth also, and if the sunlight is not there, then extremely cold. So for that also, sun is responsible, as well as when I say light, for light also we get light from sun. So for both of it's important. So that's why light on land, it's closely linked with temperature. Deep, that is more than 500 meter in ocean, the environment is dark and its inhabitants are not aware of the existence of celestial source of energy called sun. So there are many organisms which live very deep underwater, and so deep that sunlight is not able to reach them over there. Okay, so they don't even know that there's a celestial source of energy called the sun. Then what is their source of energy? The spectral quality of solar radiation is also important for life. The ultraviolet component of the spectrum is harmful to many organisms, while not all the color components of the visible spectrum are available for marine plants living at different depths of the ocean. Among the red, green, and brown algae that inhabit the sea, which is to be likely, okay. So, the ultraviolet component of spectrum, okay, is very harmful to many organisms, while not all the color components of the visual spectrum are available for marine plants which live at different depths of the ocean. We know UV light is really harmful for us, okay, the sunlight, but all the regions of visible light is not present for all the organisms. So let's come to the last abiotic factor, that is soil. So in soil, the nature and properties of soil in different places vary. It is dependent on the climate, the weathering process, whether soil is transported or sedimentary, and how soil development occurred. Various characteristics of soil, such as soil composition, grain size, and aggregation, determine the percolation and water holding capacity of the soils. These characteristics, along with the parameters such as pH, mineral composition, and topography, determine to a large extent the vegetation in any area. This in turn dictates the type of animals that can be supported similarly in the aquatic environment. The sediment characteristic often determine the type of benthic animals that can thrive there. Okay, so uh, we were at soil, yeah. So the nature and properties of soil in different places, they vary, okay. uh, they are the nature and properties, they are dependent on the climate as well as the weathering process, okay, from which rock, like sedimentary rock or metamorphic rock or igneous rock, weathering, how it has taken place, and what type of soil it is. All those properties, they all are dependent on parent rock, you can say, and whether soil is transported or sedimentary, and how development occurred, basically, yeah, all of those things. Various characteristics of soil, such as the soil composition, what it is composed of, which minerals or whatever is there, then the grain size, the aggregation that aggregation determine the percolation and water holding capacity. So what is percolate? When I say percolate, we must have learned in, first of all of you got what's weathering, right? Weathering, in earlier classes we used to say, if this is the parent rock, okay, over time, there was sunlight and then rain and then, snow and different climate conditions, and then this crack appeared, and years and years passed, more years and years passed, and then it broke into two, and then there were more pieces, and then more pieces, and then more pieces, and finally it became fine grains of soil. This whole process is known as weathering, okay. We all know that, that's very basic, we have learned. Now what is percolation? Percolation also we must have learned in lower classes, in rainwater harvesting. When we used to learn this percolation in that chapter, I remember. So when I have this is, let's say this is soil, okay, and I I put water. I'm sorry, I terrible drawing. Okay, put water in it. So the water, it percolates through, and let's say here we put some collection something, and we can see the water, it passed through, like how much gets percolated, okay, and how much water does not get percolated. So let's say 100 ml I poured and I only received 50 ml, so that means 50 ml is the water holding capacity of this soil, okay, the water holding capacity. There's an experiment also for this. Okay, so these characteristics along with parameters such as the pH of the soil, okay, the mineral composition and the topography determine to a large extent the vegetation in any area. This in turn dictates the type of animals which can be supported. Similarly, in the aquatic environment, the sediment characteristic often determine the type of benthic animals which can thrive there. In aquatic environment, also sediment characteristic determine the animals which can thrive in there. Now we come to responses to abiotic factors. Okay, so let's start reading. Having realized that abiotic conditions of many habitats may vary drastically in time, we now ask, how do the organisms living in such habitats cope or manage with stressful conditions? We realize that abiotic conditions of many habitats vary drastically, okay, with time. In in Gujarat and Mumbai and these regions, Goa, most of the time, like the climate and season, everything, it's mostly fairly constant. Okay, but if you live in Bangalore or Delhi, then you'll know that in summers it's very hot, and then in winters also it's very cold. So like extreme climates. So uh, so now we ask that how so drastically changes in habitat and abiotic condition with time. How do organisms in such habitats cope or manage with such stressful situations? Before attempting to answer this question, we should perhaps ask first why a highly variable external environment should bother organisms after all. Before we answer that question, we should ask that क्या ही फर्क पड़ता है, means why would it bother at all? One would expect that during the course of millions of years of their existence, many species would have evolved a relatively constant internal within the body environment which permits all biochemical reactions and physiological functions to proceed with maximum efficiency and thus enhance the overall fitness of the species. The constancy, for example, could be in terms of optimal temperature and osmotic concentration of body fluids. Ideally, then the organism should try to maintain the constancy of its internal environment, a process which is known as homeostasis, despite varying external environment conditions which tend to upset its homeostasis. So what are they exactly saying over here? They are trying to make what point? So they are saying that before we answer that, how why we need to go through such stressful conditions like weather change, and many people they get sick in rainy season. Many people they have a tendency, the moment very high rain will start or sudden winter season will start, they'll get sick for no reason. Also, for 2 3 days they'll get light fever and cough and cold, because and if you ask them what happened, they'll say weather change. Okay, so the question is that why would we have to go through that at all? Isn't it understood that over millions of years a particular species would have enhanced itself? No, we humans over such a long period of time, isn't it understood that we would have evolved to have that constancy inside us, constant internal environment, so that all our biochemical and physiological functions all proceed with maximum efficiency and provide us overall fitness to the body? Isn't it understood that the constancy can be like optimal temperature and osmotic concentration of our body, all of them can be constant and they can be optimal, so that whatever we do, no matter whether it's what the temperature is outside or what is happening in the external environment, inside our body everything remains the same. The internal environment of the body is constant. Okay, this internal environment is constant. Okay, isn't it like that? Like, isn't it understood? Like, why should we at all change this process? Okay, this process of maintaining or the internal environment being constant despite varying external environmental condition is known as homeostasis. Okay, so if there's a question what is homeostasis, you need to write that yeah, when the internal environment is constant despite or the organism, when the organism successfully maintain the internal environment and keep it constant no matter what the external environmental conditions are, how disturbing the environment or varying the external and environmental conditions are, it is known as homeostasis. Okay. And what tends to upset the homeostasis? The external environmental conditions. So let us take an analogy to clarify this important concept. Okay, suppose a person is able to perform his her best when the temperature is 25 degrees Celsius and wishes to it so, even when it is scorchingly hot or freezing cold outside. It could be achieved at home, in the car while traveling, or at workplace by using an air conditioner in summer and heater in winter. Then his or performance would be always maximal regardless of the weather around him or her. Here the person's homeostasis is accomplished not through physiological but artificial means. How do other living organisms cope with the situation? Okay, so he took an example that a person is only able to perform best at this temperature, 25 degrees Celsius. So with heater and cooler and AC and everything, we made sure that his efficiency is maximal all the time, and he's maximum efficient because we fixed the temperature. Okay. uh, but how do other living organisms cope up with this? Here we come to two important things. Okay, actually four. So regulator, conformer, migrators, and suspenders. Okay, so on the basis of the response to abiotic factors, okay, we have first, let's come to regulate. So, some organisms are able to maintain homeostasis by physiological or behavioral means, which ensures constant body temperature, constant osmotic concentration, etc. All birds and mammals, and a very few lower vertebrate and invertebrate species, are indeed capable of such regulation, that is thermoregulation as well as osmoregulation. Evolutionary biologists believe that success of mammals is largely due to their ability to maintain a constant body temperature and thrive whether they live in Antarctica or in the desert. The mechanism used by most mammals to regulate their body temperature are similar to the ones that humans use. We maintain a constant body temperature of 37 degrees Celsius. In summer, when outside temperature is more than our body temperature, we sweat profusely. The resulting evaporative cooling, similar to what happens with a desert cooler in operation, brings down the body temperature in winter when the temperature is much lower than the 37 degrees Celsius. We start to shiver, a kind of exercise which produces heat and raises the body temperature. Plants, on the other hand, do not have such mechanism to maintain internal temperature. Okay, so let's come to regulate, or you can also call it regulators. Okay, so we humans, we are regulators. Okay, we perform homeostasis. So we can keep our internal environment constant no matter what. Okay, whether we go to the desert in Rajasthan, or we go to Antarctica, or Kashmir or whatever, our internal environment is always the same. It's not like we are 37 degrees Celsius. The moment we go to Kashmir in winter season, we become, I don't know, 32 degrees Celsius or something. Like our temperature will become less because we are in a nothing like that, or it will increase and become 40. No, it doesn't happen like that. Okay, so it's just an example. There are already so many examples. I still try to give more examples. Most of them, that's on the spot I gave. So anyways, so so we are capable. So apart from mammals and birds There are very few lower vertebrates and invertebrates which are capable of thermoregulation as well as osmoregulation. Now, evolutionary biologists believe that the success of mammals is due to their ability to maintain constant body temperature. Okay, the mechanism used by most mammals to regulate their body temperature is similar to the one that we use. Okay, we maintain at 37 degree. When we go outside, we sweat profusely, but it doesn't change our inside temperature. The resulting evaporate cooling, similar to what happens with desert cooler, brings down the body temperature. When we start to shiver, okay, a kind of exercise produces heat and raises the body temperature. So we, through physiological as well as behavioral techniques, we control our external environment constant, no matter what the external environmental condition is. Therefore, we are also called as regulators, and we keep a continuous perform the process of homeostasis, that is keep our internal environment constant all the time. But unfortunately, the aquatic organisms are not able to do so. Sorry, not aquatic organism, what am I saying, plants. Sorry, plants are not able to do so, so they are known as conformers. Okay, now what's conformers? I told you that we are regulators and plants are not regulators, they are conformers. So what we do, plants cannot do. So it's, I think, very self-explanatory that if regulators can maintain their internal environment and keep it constant, then conformers cannot do it. Okay, so because it's pretty straightforward, still we'll read the paragraph. An overwhelming majority, that is 99% of animals and nearly all plants, cannot maintain a constant internal environment. Their body temperature changes with the ambient temperature. In aquatic animals, the osmotic concentration of the body fluid change with that of the ambient air. Actually, aquatic animals, you know why I was going to write aquatic organisms, because I think even fishes are conformers. So yeah, it wasn't wrong, but here plants was written, so that's why. An overwhelming majority, 99% of the animals and nearly all plants cannot maintain a constant internal environment. It's difficult for them to maintain a constant internal environment. Their body temperature changes with the ambient temperature. I told you now that if we go cold to a cold region, our body temperature will also change. It will also become cold, or it will become hot, whatever it is. Like, it will continuously change with where we are, whereas the temperature of the location where we are. But that doesn't happen. But that doesn't happen for human beings. Okay, but for um, 99% of animals as well as plants, this is what happens. They are conformers. In aquatic animals, the osmotic concentration of the body fluids change with that of the ambient air, water osmotic concentration. So we perform thermoregulation, that is keep our temperature, internal temperature constant, as well as osmoregulation, that is keep our water concentration also constant. Okay, temperature constant as well as water concentration constant. Whereas osmotic regulation is not performed by aquatic animals. For the body fluid change with that of the ambient air and water osmotic concentration. These animals and plants are simply conformers. Okay, we are regulators, they are conformers. Considering the benefit of a constant internal environment to the organism, we must ask why these conformers have not evolved to become regulators. We know that if we keep our internal environment constant, there are so many advantages to that. If you can keep your internal environment constant, that means we can go to different parts of the world, we can discover more. But if we are conformers, then we will be restricted to only one part, because if we go to the other part, then we'll die, our body will not be able to take it. Okay, like our internal environment will continuously keep changing, we'll be unstable. Okay, so right now we can maintain a constant environment, we can go anywhere without disrupting our own physical system. So why they haven't evolved? um, Recall the human analogy we used above. Much as they like, how many people can really afford an air conditioner? Many simply sweat it out and resign themselves to suboptimal performance in hot summer months. Thermoregulation is energetically expensive for many organisms. This is particularly true for small animals like shrews and hummingbirds. like shrews and hummingbirds. Heat loss or heat gain is a function of surface area. Since small animals have larger surface area relative to their volume, they tend to lose body heat very fast when it is cold outside. Then they have to spend much energy to generate body heat through metabolism. This is the main reason why very small animals are rarely found in polar regions. During the course of evolution, the cost and benefit of maintaining a constant internal environment are taken into consideration. Some species have evolved the ability to regulate, but only over a limited range of environmental conditions, beyond which they are simply conform. If the stressful external conditions are localized or remain only for a short duration, the organism has two other alternatives for survival. Okay, so today we'll be doing already, I think, already it's 55 minutes. So already it's been very long videos. So we'll start with population. I'll upload both videos together. Okay, don't worry. So the next video will be about population and population interactions. Okay. This video is only about organisms and abiotic factors, response to abiotic factors, and we'll do adaptations and we'll wrap it up. So, thermoregulation. Okay. So why haven't they evolved? If we ask the question why haven't they evolved, earlier we saw in the NCERT an example was given. Okay, about why about like to have maximal efficiency. That person, he used to use air conditioner and heater. But can everyone afford? Is everyone so rich so as to afford air conditioners and heaters and all? No. So that's why we can say that uh, generating heat, thermoregulation, okay, generating heat or losing heat to keep your internal environment constant all the time, it is very energetically expensive. It is particularly true for small animals. Why small animals? Because heat loss or heat gain is a function of surface area. Small animals have larger surface area relative to their volume. So if you see the volume of small animals, their area is more than their volume. For us, our surface area is not more than our volume. Okay, our volume is much higher than our surface area. Whereas for small animals, it's opposite. Their surface area is larger when we compare it to their volume. So therefore, they tend to lose their body heat very fast. Okay, because they don't have much volume, right? And their surface area is more as compared to the volume, so they'll suddenly the heat loss will happen. They'll lose heat very fast. So when they lose heat very fast, they'll have to do 2x more energy to generate that heat through metabolism. And this is the main reason why we don't find many small organisms in polar regions also. So, during the course of evolution, cost and benefit of maintaining constant internal environment has been taken into consideration. Uh, During the course of evolution, the size and everything together, the cost and benefit has been seen on whether internal environment homeostasis can be done or not, whether they can be regulators or not. Some have been over a limited range environmental condition. They have been able to regulate their internal environment. Okay, but most of them, they are simply conformers. If the stressful external conditions are localized or remain only for short duration, then there are two other alternatives. So there are two other alternatives. Okay, for if the external conditions are localized, or the external environmental condition only for a short time they are there, then we have two more alternatives. I'll read both of them, then I'll explain. First is migrators, that is migration. We know flamingos, every year, we used to study, they migrate to, Chilika Lake and all. So the organism can move away temporarily from the stressful habitat to a more hospitable area and return when the stressful period is over. Underline this. In human analogy, this strategy is like person moving from Delhi to Shimla for duration of summer. Many animals, particularly birds during winter, undertake long distance migration to more hospitable areas. Every winter, famous Colorado National Park in Bharatpur in Rajasthan hosts thousands of migratory birds which come from Siberia and other extremely cold northern regions. So whenever it's extremely hot or extremely cold, the organisms, migrate from one place to another. This is a behavioral response. Please mark this. Okay, this is not a physiological response. This is a behavioral response. For temporarily, for short duration of times, the organism, they migrate from one place to another in order to keep their body temperature or internal environment constant. Then comes suspenders. Okay, here you need to Siberian cranes, coming from Siberia to Rajasthan. This is a very in Colorado National Park. You need to remember the example. Now, suspenders. In bacteria, fungi, and lower plants, various kinds of thick-walled spores are formed which help them to survive in unfavorable conditions. These germinate on availability of suitable environment. In higher plants, seeds and some other vegetative reproductive structures serve as means to tide over periods of stress besides helping in dispersal. They germinate to form new plants under favorable moisture and temperature conditions. They do so by reducing their metabolic activity and going into a state of dormancy. So, in bacteria, fungi, and lower plants, various thick-walled spores are formed, okay, which help them to survive in unfavorable conditions. They germinate on availability. So we have learned this in 11th standard, that wherever there is unsuitable conditions are there, thick-walled spores are formed, and then whenever suitable conditions are achieved, they just start germinating. Before that, they are inactive, okay, or they are in a dormant state. Similarly, in higher plants, seeds, and some other vegetative reproductive structures serve as a means to tide over periods of stress besides helping in dispersal. So in dispersal, because rough and tough, so in dispersal also it takes place. Plus to overcome stressful periods, so as to find the chosen uh, suitable environment to germinate, favorable moisture and under favorable moisture and temperature conditions, these thick-walled spores are there. Okay, so they do so by reducing their metabolic activity and going into a state of dormancy. This was for plants. Okay, so for plants, suspenders, for plants it's thick-walled spores. For plants and fungi and all, and bacteria and lower plants, it's fungi, spores which are very thick walled, as well as seeds and some other vegetative reproductive structures. Now we come to animals. If the organism is unable to migrate, might avoid stress by escaping in time. The familiar case of bears going into hibernation during the winter season is an example of escape in time. Please underline the entire migrate as well as suspenders para. Okay, this is important. It is an example in time. Some snails and fish go into estivation to avoid summer-related problems, heat and desiccation. Under unfavorable conditions, many zooplankton species in lakes and ponds are known to enter a diapause. Diapause is a stage of suspended development. Okay, so migrators, suspenders. So in migrators, remember, move away temporarily from stressful to a favorable condition. They move. Okay, so they escape the place. Okay, and this is behavioral. Now here they escape time. Okay, so in suspenders, when I come to plants, there's spores which are thick walled, then seeds, then other vegetative reproductive structures. When I come to animals, then we know that bears undergo hibernation. We know snails and some fishes, they undergo estivation. So we have hibernation and estivation. Hibernation takes place in winter season. In winter season, this takes place in summer season. Why in winter season? To escape cold. Why in summer season? To escape extreme heat or desiccation. Also you can say dehydration, desiccation, drying away. Now under unfavorable conditions, zooplankton, they enter a diapause, which is a state of suspended development. Suspend. suspend, dormant, dormancy, suspenders, suspended development. Okay, means temporarily you can shut it off. Okay, the match has been suspend. No, I we say now that due to rain the match has been suspended. So similarly, that is zooplankton.